Hi, and welcome back. Today we're going to do Block 5, Topic 1, Lesson 2. And you'll remember, you already know how to model fractions as part of a whole. So when we were doing how many 1/6 pieces are there in 2/3, you would build the 2/3 and then build the 1/6 underneath. I'm having trouble getting to my pen. That's a highlighter. That we could make those 4/6 in here. They won't let me drag it up. But everything that a lot of what we did in block 4, we always use the fraction pieces. And as we get into block 5 and on into block 6, our goal is to get away from those fraction pieces. Today you'll learn how to write fractions equivalent to a half without using our fraction pieces. We'll also look at a relationship between the numerator and the denominator in fractions that are equal to 1/2. So I started out here with 1/2, and I started building fractions that equal 1/2. So you can see that 1/2 equals 2/4, equals 3/6, equals 4/8, equals 5/10. So we did a little bit of this in a bell work not too long ago. We could continue this if we want. Equals 6/12, equals 8/16. And we want to start noticing this relationship between the numerator and the denominator so that we can start to develop a rule. So I want you to notice every numerator. If we move down to the denominator, what happens to the numerator to get the denominator? What happens to 6? How's it related to 12? How is 5 related to 10? How's 4 related to 8? How's 3 related to 6? How's 2 related to 4? And even the half itself, how is the 1 related to the 2? If you start with the numerator and you're looking for the denominator, you should notice that all the denominators are the numerator times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times 2 is 8. Now let's do the same thing, but look at the relationship for all the denominators to the numerators. All the numerators are smaller than their denominators. There's an exact relationship between every denominator back up to the numerator. Each numerator is exactly half the denominator. So by going from the denominator, if you know it, you can divide by 2 to get a numerator so that the fraction equals half. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we have that relationship established. So these are the rules. I kind of like my little graphic organizer better. You could abbreviate this, and I would suggest you do write something down before you try to do your work. The numerator is always the denominator divided by 2. The denominator is always the numerator times 2 in fractions equal to a half. This relationship only works if we're looking for fractions that equal a half. Now you'll remember the diagram I had on the other screen said you could take the numerator times 2 to get the denominator, or you can take the denominator and divide it by 2 in order to get the numerator. So we're going to try a couple of examples, and then you have a Kahoot challenge where you can practice on your own. I would suggest pausing the video now and writing one of these techniques, one of these memory devices down, so that you have it as you practice. Oh, let's see if I can get this erased. So here's our first example. We're trying to figure out how many 18ths it would take to equal a half. So we know the denominator and we want to find the numerator. If we take the denominator and divide it by 2, then we'll know the numerator. The denominator is 18. When you divide it by 2, we get the numerator. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So 1/2 is the same as 9/18. We have one more example. 1/2 equals 15 somethings. We don't know how many equal pieces that's divided into. So if we go back to numerator, denominator, take the numerator times 2, take the denominator and divide by half. By 2. If we want to know this denominator, if we take the numerator times 2, that'll give us the denominator. The numerator is 15 times 2. 15 times 2 is 30. So 15/30ths is the same as 1/2. This is the first example that I'd like for you to try on your own. If you would please write down 1/2 equals something over 22, pause the video, try it on your own, and then come back and check your work. If you did it right, you can even give yourself your own smiley face on paper. I do think it's important that you try this on your own before you simply just watch and look for the answers. We've talked about this before. The skill here isn't copying. The skill here is to really learn how to do it. So what we have here is we've got a denominator. So I'm going to start down here with the D, and we want to find a numerator. So that means that I need to take the denominator and divide it by 2 in order to get the numerator. 22 divided by 2 is 11. So 11/22 is the same thing as 1/2. These are equivalent or equal fractions. Same thing. Would you please write down 1/2 equals 21 over something? Pause the video and try it on your own. So I pulled down the screen. I want to make sure that you tried this on your own before we go on. So I hope that you did. So 1/2 equals 21 of what denominator? We're looking for a denominator, so we'd have to take the numerator and multiply it by 2 in order to get that denominator. 21 times 2 is 42. So 21/42 is equivalent to 1/2. So this is what the book page would have looked like. We would have done the example together and all your notes would have been taken here. Here is that rule that we're working on. I rewrote it a different way, but it's still the same thing. And so now we're going to try number 2 together. So we're going to see 1/2 is how many 24ths, and we're going to see 1/2 is how many tenths. So if you would please, I'd like for you to write these two down and see if you can find that missing number. See if you can complete that equation. Then we'll come back and check it. Thanks. All right, so let's see how you did. If we're looking for 1/2 equals how many 24ths, the rule is take the denominator and divide it by 2 in order to get the numerator. When you do 24 divided by 2, you'll get 12. So 12/24 is the same thing as 1/2. The other example you were to try is 1/2 equals 10 what? We're looking for a denominator, so you take the numerator and multiply it by 2. That gives you the denominator. Since our numerator is 10, 10 times 2 is 20. And so 1/2 is the same thing as 10/20. Today we learned to name and recognize fractions equivalent to 1/2 without using any fraction pieces, without any models. We looked at the relationship between the numerator and the denominator. There are several more for you to practice on the Kahoot that is linked in Google Classroom. So if you would please close this video and open the Kahoot, and let's see how you do. If it helps you to draw out that relationship, then put numerator over denominator. If you know the numerator, to find the denominator, multiply by 2. If you know the denominator and you're looking for the numerator, divide by 2. Now, some of the numbers involved in the Kahoot are maybe larger than your regular basic facts, so I gave you a little bit more time. I look forward to seeing your results. Thanks for joining me today. Come back next time and we'll go over the answers to the questions that were on the Kahoot and have you do a little bit of Math 180. Take care until next time.